Hi, I'm Gillian and welcome to Worthy Design Studio. Today I want to show you how you can sew a French seam into a vent. Just a quick overview as to what a French seam is and what a vent is. So a French seam is it's a nice way to finish a seam if you're using lighter weight fabrics or sheer fabrics, because it means that the raw edges are completely enclosed so you won't see them at all. A vent then is when your seam line will split out, so it's used in like the bottom of a skirt or a hem just to give a bit more space. If you're walking along, for example, and if your skirt is all tied in at the bottom, if you didn't have a vent, as soon as your legs move out, your seams would rip. So that's what the vent is. It's just that kind of extra gap at the end. So this is what the shape of a vent will look like on a pattern. So normally you would just sew a standard seam down here, you'd pivot that way, and then when you turn it inside out and press it, it will allow this space to be open at the end. But if you're doing that with a French seam, it just gets a little bit difficult when you're working around the pivot point. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. When dealing with a French seam, it's important that you know your wrong side from your right side. So with a normal seam, you would normally sew with the right sides facing each other. But with a French seam, you actually want to sew with the wrong sides facing each other. So that's how we're going to start. Now I've marked out here just a rough guide to give you an idea what we're going to do. So I normally work to a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So my first line of stitching is going to be just under half of the width of a standard seam. So I'm actually going to be sewing in about 4 millimeters from the edge on the first row of stitching. I'm going to be coming down to the apex of the vent here, and I'm going to be doing a little pivot just here. So I'm going to turn the fabric and then I'm going to sew towards this point here, which is in line with what will be the 1 centimeter seam allowance line and the top little notch on the vent here. So this will all make more sense as I go along. Then you flip the fabric out on itself and all will be revealed. So here we have it. I'm going to start off with, as I said, I'm going to be doing about a 4 millimeter seam allowance to begin with. Stopping at the apex, the needle down and lift the foot and pivot down towards that little point there. Do a back stitch. And that's your first step. So then what you want to do is you're going to nick in from this corner down to that last stitch, but be careful not to stitch or to snip through it. And then as with all French seams, if you have any stragglers here, snip them away before you turn them around. So when we turn this out, you want to really poke out this corner. So you'll see now that there's that little step from where you had done the pivot point. And where you nicked into that corner, it means that you can now flip out those vent pieces. Now, I'm going to continue on and close up that French seam. So again, about 4 millimeter from the edge. And this will just be a straight line right down to the point. So that is your French seam aspect of it finished. So now we're moving on to the apex. So what I like to do here is use that as a point of reference to fold the vent back onto itself. So fold it back using the apex as a guide, and then just fold the apex down, tucking it out of the way, and fold the vent back on itself one more time. and press it in place to help you for the next step. And then you want to repeat the same on the other side. So then to finish off, you're just going to do a little edge stitch all the way around your vent. So about 1-2 mil from the edge, starting at the hem. Come right up to the top corner. The needle in place, lift up your presser foot, pivot your fabric, get that apex tucked nicely in, and drop your presser foot again, sewing over to that other top corner. Lift and pivot. And finish down to the hem. That's your French seam here, running into your vent that you've boxed off nicely. You can press the French seam to one side just to make things nice and neat. And then when you flip it over onto the right side, so that's your seam line. You can still see where I had marked my centimetre seam allowance, so not too far off. And that is your vent sealed off nicely. So there you have it. That's how I sew a French seam into a vent. So I hope that that's been of some use to you and that you'll join me again soon for some more tutorials. Thanks.